How are you?
Great. How about you?
I'm very well. I'm very well. Everyone, this is Coach Bob McKillop, head coach of Davidson men's basketball. And very excited to have you on, Coach. Obviously, we talk over the years from time to time. But firstly, let me get this out of the way and just tell you and express to you how grateful we are for the job you've done as former players, as former alumni. You give us such a relevance, and you've made Davidson a really special place, a place that we always knew was special, but now the rest of the world has grown to know that as well. So from the bottom of my heart, that's very important to me, and thank you very much.
Well, it's very important to us that guys from your era, the 80s, guys from the 60s and the 70s, and guys from the 90s on are all connected. And I think that's a tribute to the great players that you guys have been, the terrific assistant coaches. And I think it's also a tribute to Davidson College and a sense of intimacy that has existed on its campus for generations. So thank you for being part of that legacy.
No problem. So what's the current enrollment at Davidson?
2,000.
Wow.
And there's about 120 still on campus right now amidst the pandemic.
And Davidson, people don't realize that Davidson and Australia have had a pretty good link over years, going back a long time. There have been many players and students that have attended Davidson from Australia, and it's surprising. And now you're starting to extend that. The women have 3 players.
Well, you know, it goes back to Rocky Crosswhite, who played for Lefty Drizel, and exactly. I think he was the executive director of the Olympic Games in Melbourne, if I'm correct, back in the 90s. And Rocky played here for Lefty Drizel and then went on to a career in Australia and stayed there. Yes. And actually had 2 children. One, Ian, played for Oregon, and
That's right.
His daughter came here for a year.
She did.
So the great connection continues from as far back as Lefty Drizel, and we certainly are delighted that the Pacific has been such a fertile ground for our women's program, and we believe that it will become a fertile ground for us, particularly if Sam Menenga from Auckland, New Zealand, is the kind of player we believe he is. He's practiced with us for a couple of months, and we're just overjoyed that he is with our program.
Now, you really were ahead of the curve in terms of international recruiting at Davidson. Why did you go that route? And how did you establish that link throughout the world, especially in Europe, early?
Well, it's a fascinating story, Derek. In 1979, wow. I got a phone call from a guy who was just a neighborhood guy. And he says, there's a 7-footer that would like to come to play for you at Long Island Lutheran High School. And I, of course, was welcomed that opportunity. And I meet him as he comes off the school bus the first day of school, and he was all 7 foot, and it was Bill Wennington. Bill Wennington, who eventually was a first-round pick of the Dallas Mavericks, I think 16th pick. And I think he got 3 rings with the Bulls, playing with Michael and Scotty and Dennis Rodman and Cartwright. And so Bill Wennington was the first one I had from quote unquote overseas. He was from Canada, Montreal, Canada. And he came to Lutheran because his parents divorced and his mother moved to Long Island. His father stayed in Montreal, so he came with his mother. He goes and plays in the McDonald's All-American game, and his teammate was Chris Mullen in that game. And the game was coached by Morgan Wooten, a legendary coach of DeMatha High School in Washington. Nothing happened other than that Bill left Long Island Lutheran, went to St. John's, had a terrific career there. But 2 years later, Morgan Wooten is running his camp down at DeMatha in the summer, and he had several Italian boys. And all the schools in the neighborhood were trying to recruit him, and he wanted to get him out of Washington, D.C. So he called me up, and he says, you've had international players before, Wennington, so why don't you take this kid, Augusto Bonelli? And certainly I welcomed another 7-footer, Augusto Bonelli from Virtus Bologna in Bologna, Italy.
Yeah.
Years, became a high school All-American, and was recruited by everybody. Went right back to the pros in Italy and was a second-round pick of Atlanta. So all of a sudden the floodgates opened. I was invited to a clinic there. I had a camp there, and that's how it all happened.
Wow.
1981. So that was 1981.
Wow. And you obviously had a lot of success at the high school level with Long Island Lutheran. One thing I noticed going through your record, you just don't lose.
Well, check my first 4 years here at Davidson. We lost quite a bit. But you weren't losing. You were reestablishing a program. So for the history, I graduated from Davidson in 1988. My coach was an excellent coach by the name of Bobby Hussey. Correct.
He had one more season after I graduated, and then he moved on, and Coach McKillop was hired in 1989. And we kind of met back then, but we've stayed in touch over these 30 plus years. And then Bob came in 1989, 1990 was your first season at Davidson.
And you know, those first couple of years, and maybe a point of emphasis for your listening audience, I came in like an arrogant New Yorker. I thought I was going to wave a magic wand. We were going to win 25 games a year, and the New York Knicks were going to come and offer me the job.
Right.
And I was a high school coach with that arrogance. So
Right.
I got brought to my knees. And the disappointing and heartbreaking aspect of it for me was that the group of players that I had in those first 3 years here laid the foundation for our future. They were outstanding in the way they tried to create a culture. And I was not as good a coach to them as I should have been, because they deserve something better. And I was more concerned about my relevance and my future, and should have spent more time caring about them. And I regret to this day that I didn't give them a better experience playing basketball here at Davidson. And that became something that I could not get back, but I certainly could make amends for it by the way I handled the future. And that's been a big driving force in my career here at Davidson.
So what I'm reading is that you kind of came to Davidson and you saw it as a stepping stone to get somewhere else, didn't have focus on the there and now. And what you're saying, although I've talked to many of those players, and they certainly don't feel that way. They understand the lessons that they learned, and they love them. They love that moment with you. But, you know, it just shows that you've got to be locked in on right now.
Well, you know, we've heard the comment from Mike Krzyzewski a lot, next play. And the next play for me was out the door, climbing the corporate ladder. And, you know, you accomplish things, and then you take that next step. But you first have to accomplish. And the only way you're going to accomplish anything is to keep your eye on the ball, keep your eye on what's in front of you right now. And I think that's just a human instinct. You're a competitor, and you lose sight of the fact that you have a team. They're human beings. They need to be treated with the kind of care that they work so hard and deserve so much. And when you're starting to think about your own future rather than their future, I think that's when you go, you really screw yourself up. And that's what happened to me.
So when did you make the change and start really locking in? You said you thought you weren't a very good coach. When did you turn the corner and realize that in those first 3 or 4 years, you didn't feel like you were doing the right thing by your players in the program?
Well, in that fourth year, we had a captain by the name of Matt Matheny. Matt Matheny was a football player and a basketball player. Did not play very much in basketball, but was a tremendous leader. And he took control of the locker room. And he became my point man for getting us all on the same page, not just the players, but me with the players. And that's when it all began. It began with that 1993-1994 season. We had another terrific player by the name of Detlef Musch, a German player. We had another player by the name of Jason Zimmerman. And the result of those guys putting their fingerprints all over the program, I thought that was the thing that turned the corner for us. And you've got to give credit to our assistant coaches. Steve Sharina was a great assistant. Larry Garlow was a great assistant. Matt Doherty was a great assistant. Don Hogan was a great assistant. So we had a lot of terrific assistant coaches who really helped us turn that corner. So it's a combination. It's assistant coaches, leadership on your team, plus players willing to establish a new culture. So I had to learn that experience. I thought it was all me. You know,
So were you a tough disciplinarian in those early days? Like, what would a training session look like then?
too difficult. Derek, I did things to them, not things for them. And that's one of the
Right.
mistakes young coaches always make. It's their way or the highway. And particularly in our culture today, that has to change dramatically. You have to explain it. You had the communication, and that communication, I think, was lacking. I just went in there like a totalitarian dictator and made them do things that in their minds seemed nonsense. But there was a method behind that madness, but I did not explain it to them. And that's one of the regrets I had.
Wow. So the program keeps building, though, and in '98, we finally qualified. Well, not we, but you.
Well, thank you for we. I love that we. Thank you.
We make it in '98, and so let me see. I'm in the middle of my pro career, and it's hard when you're a pro to be able to also follow your alma mater, especially from all the way in Australia.
Correct. Yeah.
But I'm keeping an eye on it, and this is pre-internet. Now it's a lot easier, but this is like internet's just breaking through, and I'm like, okay, we're back. We've made the NCAAs, and we get to round one in '98. Who did you face in '98? That must have been a great feeling, man.
Yeah, it was down in Atlanta. We played Michigan with Tractor Trailer.
That's
right. And they had some other very good players as well. And I remember being criticized during the course of the game, listening to the game after we played it out, that we were running with Michigan. We should have played a possession game and slowed it down. But we were not that kind of team that we could slow things down. And if you slow things down with a team that the whole year they ran, you would be sending up a signal to your team, we're not good enough to play them. And I wanted our guys believing they could beat anybody. And we were going to do what we did, and we are going to do it better than what we've done in the past. And maybe that would lead to success. But yet Billy Packer was very critical of me for trying to run with Michigan. We wound up losing by 15 or 17 points. And it was our first experience in postseason in an NCAA tournament. And, you listen to guys that played in the NBA in the playoffs, and you hear almost the same story, that you need experience, playoff experience, to get good at being a playoff player. Well, we needed NCAA tournament experience to become good as an NCAA team. And once every 6-7 years was not going to give us that experience.
That's correct. Now, in that '98 team, who were some of the guys that you went to? Who were some of your leaders? Who were some of the glue guys? And who was the star of that team?
Well, it's interesting because it was the '96 team that was the best that we've ever had. Brandon Williams, who eventually had a career in the NBA in Europe and assistant general manager of Sacramento. Now he's out in Sacramento, was a great player for us. And Chris Albert, who ran the D League for the NBA for a while. Now he's a scout with Sacramento, our point guard. And we had two players from Cameroon, Raymond Mindlin and RCC Wodo. We had a kid drafted in the second round by the Clippers, Quinn Harwood. We had great players, and we went undefeated in conference play, but then got upset in the final round of the Southern Conference tournament by Western Carolina. And but that team had a young group with it, and that young group went through that season and really put it to use when they went into their final year in '98. And Mark Donnelly was one of the pivotal players. Ben Ebong was a great player. Andrew Kosmalski was a great player. Ali Tan was a great player. So we had a lot of a diverse kind of team. Ali Tan was from Turkey. Ben Ebong was from Nebraska. Mark Donnelly was from New Jersey. Landry Kosmalski was from Texas. We had a diverse team, but one that really had a tremendous chemistry about it.
And it's funny you're bringing up all these names, and these are guys that I didn't even play with and hardly have even met, but guys who I ran into Ben Ebong out here in Australia. We caught up. Ali, I talked to Ali about 3 months ago, just through basketball circles. Brandon, we communicate because of some other basketball things.
And we've had terrific players who had fathers with terrific players. Kenny Grant, who is now the assistant coach of the Swedish national team, longtime player in Europe. His dad, Kenny Grant Sr., was a famous player at St. Peter's and then all across the European continent. Brendan Winters, his dad, Brian Winters, great career in the NBA.
He's another one I talked to.
Landry Kosmolsky and Logan Kosmolsky, their dad, Len Kosmolsky, played for many years in the NBA. Jason Richards, his dad, played for the University of Pittsburgh. And there was another great player who had even a better father as a player, Matt McKillop. So we tried to recruit players because those are the guys that hung out in the gym with their father. They went to practice. Their father knew competition. Their father knew work ethic. And at the age of 10, Stephen Curry is playing baseball with our youngest son, Brendan, for the Charlotte Heat, an AAU team here in Charlotte, baseball. And if you watched Stephen Curry, they won a state championship. And if you watch Stephen Curry play baseball, you would say, wow, this guy's got a chance to make it to the major leagues. You know, you're thinking Derek Jeter. That's what you're thinking when you're looking at him play. He just had such he roamed center field, or he roamed the shortstop position. He just had such a great grace about him. Tremendous eye-hand coordination, really great break on the ball, all of those things on the baseball field that translate very well to the basketball court.
Right.
And so I got to watch Stephen that whole summer with Brendan. Never saw him play basketball, but of course knew through his dad that that was certainly something in his future. Then as he became a freshman at Charlotte Christian, we began to see him in different games throughout the city of Charlotte. And lo and behold, we watched him. And by the end of his sophomore year, we were convinced he could play for us. We recruited him as a junior, and the summer leading up to his senior year is when we really put the full court press on him, and he committed to us in September. And we did not have to fight many schools for him. I want to say that Winthrop University, just in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and maybe Liberty in Lynchburg, Virginia, were the two schools. So I think we were the three schools that came after him the hardest. And he committed to us in September. And I'll never forget the day. Matt Matheny, our lead assistant at that time, associate head coach, and I went and took a home visit. And Dell and Sonia and Stephen entertained us at their house on an afternoon. And out of the clear blue, Stephen said, "Coach, I want to come to Davidson." And we didn't need a car to get home. We flew home. We were just ecstatic because we knew we got a steal. Wow.
And at that time, what was the rest of the basketball community? I'm sure you hear whispers, Davidson's going after Curry's kid. He's small, he's skinny, he can't play. Or were people thinking like, that's a good get, that's a good risk? What was the vibe like out in the basketball world?
There was not much stated about it because Stephen had not put his fingerprints all over the success that was going to become his future. He was just a modest basketball player and certainly didn't look the part. Skinny, baby-faced, small in stature. Uniform looked, it was comical how the uniform just hung on him because he looked so skinny. So there was not much fanfare at all that, geez, Davidson got a great player in Stephen Curry. Then his senior year in high school started. Then all of a sudden he started putting numbers up, and all of a sudden it came pretty clear that, we got a pretty darn good player there. And in fact, some schools tried to steal him in the spring of that year. Some high-powered programs tried to steal him. And to this day, I'll never forget the integrity and the honor of Del Curry and Sonia Curry in saying, no, he's made a commitment to Davidson, and he's going to Davidson. And the apple hasn't fallen far from the tree, and that same honor and that same integrity has been part of Stephen's life ever since I've known him.
So his first season at Davidson was, 06, 07?
Correct, yeah.
And what's the rest of the group like at that time? Who else came in that freshman class with him?
Well, that was the interesting fact. The previous year, we had 7 seniors. 7 guys graduated.
Wow.
Matt McKillop, Brendan Winters, Kenny Grant, Ian Johnson, all starters. Off the bench, you had Jason Morton, you had Eric Blansett, and you had Chris Clooney, our current athletic director.
Yes. So
you had these 7 guys who were experienced. They had won a bid to the NCAA. We played Ohio State and had Ohio State on the ropes. So they were very successful. As juniors, they went undefeated in the Southern Conference. This was a terrific group. So there were no expectations whatsoever. We had 3 very good juniors named Jason Richards, Thomas Sander, and Boris Menno. But the senior class did not have a scholarship player. We had a very good walk-on named John Falcone, but we did not have a team loaded with a lot of veteran, experienced players. So Stephen came in as a freshman, and the expectations were low. And I think we wound up winning 27 games, got to the NCAA tournament, played Maryland up in Buffalo in the first round. And with 16 minutes to go, I believe we were up by 6 or 7 points.
Yeah,
and,
I followed this game live.
They were very good. They had Strawberry, and they had Ibekwe, and they had I can't remember. They had the guy from Argentina or somewhere in South America. So they had a very good team. Very good team.
And so how many points a game did Steph average that year?
I want to say he averaged about 22 a game, and Jason Richards was actually second in the country in assists. So, Jason was second as a junior, and then he was first as a senior. And, nice to have Stephen Curry catching your passes.
Right. So you played Steph in your offensive system. Steph was basically the off guard, and Jason ran the offense.
Correct. Yeah. Stephen played about 4 or 5 minutes a game as a point guard, as a freshman and as a sophomore. Played 35 minutes a game, and about 4 or 5 of them as a point. And Jason played about 33 minutes, 34 minutes, and when he came out, Steph went to the point.
Right. So that first year, obviously, his first year, obviously, was good. But then the real run comes, though, the following year, right? 07, 08?
Yeah. We had such a sensational run for that 3 years that Steph was with us. So now we go into that next year, and expectations were high because we had Jason and Thomas and Boris and Stephen back, and we had a rising sophomore named Max Paulus Goslin.
Yep.
And we had another rising soph named Andrew Lovedale. So we had expectations, and our schedule was dramatically different than the previous year. First 3 weeks we played Duke, North Carolina State, and UCLA.
Wow.
We broke for Christmas, and I think our record was 4-6. I think it was 4-6 at Christmas. And usually, you have a couple of days off, and I'm lamenting the fact that they were 4-6 at Christmas. Geez, I thought we were going to be better. But we looked at who we played. We were in the game the whole way till the end against Duke and North Carolina. We actually had a 17-point lead against UCLA out in California.
Yeah. And
we lost by 1 point to North Carolina State. So we were not losing to chopped liver, and we were handling ourselves pretty well, and our confidence was emerging. We could play with these guys. And what, that UCLA team was interesting because the guy I always Westbrook.
Yeah.
Didn't even start. And I thought Westbrook was the best defensive player in Stephen's 3 years. I thought Westbrook did the best job on Stephen. But Westbrook didn't even start for that team. Darren Collison was on it.
That's it.
Kevin Love was on it.
Yep.
They were really good. That year, UCLA, North Carolina, Kansas, who beat us in the Elite Eight, and Memphis, those are the Final Four. So we played 3 of the 4 Final Four teams. Right.
Wow. And I mean, it's always tough, especially when you're trying to establish yourself as a program. The way the college system works, you need to play some big time schools, but yet you're going to take some lumps, and that can affect your record. As you said, at 4-6, it puts a lot of pressure on you to have to perform in conference, right?
Well, the hardest thing was the Southern Conference was a 1-bid league, and for your fans, what that means is that you have to win the berth, the automatic bid in your conference. And no matter how well you do in your regular season conference play, unless you win the conference tournament, which is 3 days of grueling pressure, unless you win that, it's over. And we had actually won the conference the previous year. And I think in Steph's sophomore year, I think we went undefeated in conference play. I think we were 18-0. But even with that 18-0, there was no guarantee we'd have gotten to the NCAA tournament unless we win the conference tournament. So having those games as sort of exposure games that let us know what we have to do to play at the highest level was very important. And it also served the purpose of building our confidence, because we had our confidence. We had our confidence built tremendously from those 3 games. Great crowds. And as I said, the game against UCLA, we had a 17-point lead, and we just let it get away from us in the end.
Well, someone has written on here 23-0. So was there a 23-0 run that must have gone 18?
No, I think we were 20-0 in the conference, and then we won 3 straight in the conference tournament. So that's
there we go.
3-0. Yeah.
Wow, that's a great run. And then so you win the conference tournament. March Madness, here we go. Steph's sophomore season. Who do you play first?
Well, it's interesting because one of the scheduling strategies, we would always look at where the NCAA tournament was, and we would try to, I guess in a sense, confidently, we would try to get a game in that particular arena. And it just so happened that we played NC State in Raleigh-Durham back in December and lost, as I said, by 1 point or 2 points. So we had been in Raleigh-Durham before that arena, the NC State arena, and that's where the opening round was. And a stroke of luck, we drew Gonzaga in the first round. Gonzaga had to fly all across the country. We drove 2 hours, and we had an edge. We had an advantage because of that. And
you feel like you're breathing the same air, right?
Yeah, I'm not apologizing for it either, believe me. But we did have an edge. So the game starts, and they've got Darren Day, and they've got Heilinger, and I mean, they were good. They were really good. Pargo, and we're down 9 in the first half. And in the first half, Thomas Sander, his nickname was the General. He was the general of our defense.
Right.
He's making a post move, and he breaks his thumb. Guy hit him the wrong way, and he broke his thumb. So he goes into the locker room for the latter 3 or 4 minutes of the first half, and his thumb's it's diagnosed as a break, and we're not sure he's even going to play in the second half. We're down by 9 points. Well, 2 guys stepped up to the plate. Thomas played with the thumb taped, but wasn't as 100%.
Right.
Steve Rossiter and Andrew Lovedale got on a stage and performed like they were the lead actors in a Broadway show. They were absolutely sensational. Of course, we knew how good Steph and Jason Richards were together. So the combination of Stephen and Jason in the backcourt and Thomas and Andrew, Thomas getting Andrew and Steven to fill in for them was sensational. And then bridging that gap was this guy, Max Paulus Goslin, who was just all arms and legs and a frenetic defender. And we had a unique combination of players, and we wound up winning the game. And this was a great finish to that game because it was 72-72, I believe, with like 51 seconds to go. Max Paulus Goslin stuck with the ball, right wing, shot clock expiring, shoots the ball at the buzzer, glazes the rim, and Andrew Lovedale came out of nowhere, fought 3 Gonzaga players for the 50-50 ball, got it. Stephen, who had gotten back on defense, immediately sees that, sprints to the arc. Andrew finds him.
Yes.
Stephen, instead of saying, okay, let's hold the ball out for one shot, no, Stephen fired. Full clock, he fires. Buries the 3. Gonzaga comes down, tries to quickly score because now they got knocked on their heels after giving up a dagger. They miss. We get the ball, foul. We go home, we win. So there was tremendous celebration because we were dead and buried, and especially with Thomas being hurt. And there was just this sense of destiny that evolved from that game that you thought, wow, you know, we got a chance here. We got a chance. So that was Good Friday. That was Good Friday of Easter week. We have Saturday off. And
when Steph is taking those threes like that, Bob, when he started doing that in transition against common basketball principles at that time, like that dagger 3, did it used to drive you crazy, or did you know what I'm saying? Because it's different. And then did you start to encourage him to do it more? How did you handle that as a coach?
Well, you got 2 options there. It could drive you crazy or it could drive the opponent crazy. I preferred option 2, drive the opponent crazy. There's nothing more demoralizing than to give up 30 seconds of great defense, give up a 50-50 rebound, and then immediately a three goes up on the board. And we call those daggers, and we would try to get them. And we try to get them in the early clock. We try to score in the first 7 seconds of the possession in transition, or after an offensive rebound, we immediately look to the arc. And, of course, our guys were great at finding Steph, and Steph was great at finding an opening. And so we practiced that. That was something that was, we call it shooting license. We don't call it shot selection. We always had what is called shooting license. You earn the license to shoot by the way you shoot in practice. And if you don't earn that license, you can always go to shooting school, which means get your butt in the gym before or after practice and improve your shooting so you can get your license. And there were some guys who had a restricted license. They were only allowed to shoot in certain areas or certain times on the clock. And there were some guys who had a suspended license. We didn't let them shoot because they blew their opportunity to prove that they could shoot the ball and be licensed to shoot it. So it was clearly defined for our team.
Now, Bob, how do you, in practice, was there a test or anything? Because I see the Steph Curry shooting test. Now, I do give that test to my players from time to time just to see where they're at, because it's mentally tough too. It's just not about going like that all the time. You got to have that will to get through it. You know, this is that, I don't know if that's actually a test that Steph does. You know that Steph Curry shooting
Correct.
test?
I know what it is, yeah.
Is that legit?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But
okay.
What we would do in practice, though, we would only take game-type shots. So we don't just come out and shoot 30 shots. They're all with game speed, in game situations, off passes by another teammate, off cuts after a screen. So every shot was designed as if it was part of our offense. So, you know, we could fast forward a second, talk about the shot Jason Richards took against Kansas that could have put us to the Final Four. Jason Richards took that shot 30, 40 times in his career and made a great percentage of it. So the shots we got in the game, the daggers Stephen consistently made, those were shots that he already practiced. And that was the marvel of Stephen, was that he had the capacity to practice the shots he was going to get in the game and do it at game speed.
Right. Wow, that's great. So you knock off Gonzaga. Actually, Coach, can you tilt your camera a little bit? Tilt it down a little bit. There we go. Perfect. There we go. Ideal. Okay, so we knock off Gonzaga, and thank you for that, because one of my former teammates, John Riley. John Riley is now an assistant coach at Santa Barbara. He's a Gonzaga guy. He played there.
Oh, great program. It's tremendous. Mark Hughes, just a superb coach, and they're a great program. And we've had some great battles against them besides that. Great battles. Yeah.
Great battles. So who's up next in 08?
So that was Good Friday, and we beat it. And I love to think, as a Catholic, I love this. Gonzaga's a Jesuit school, so we beat a Jesuit school on Good Friday. So why not play another Jesuit school on Easter Sunday? Well, here comes Georgetown, another Jesuit school. And John Thompson Jr., who is a dear friend of mine, he brings in his team, and he's got Hibbert, and he's got a sensational senior guard out of Alabama. And they had this guy named Sapp, and they had Jeremiah Rivers. They were loaded. They had won 30 games. And the year before, they had knocked off North Carolina in Greensboro, I think in their Sweet 16. I think they had done that. So now they're coming back to North Carolina. Now they're in Raleigh, and they just jump on us early. And Pat Ewing and Doc Rivers are in the stands. Del Curry's in the stands. So there's bantering back and forth between those NBA guys. And at halftime, I guess the bantering got pretty good between the three of them. And Dale was just very quiet and reserved and just took what they said, because they were up by 17 at halftime. So we go to the locker room down 17. Thomas Sanders got his finger taped up. He's 6'8", 6'9", and he's guarding this 7'2" guy, Hibbert. And we're just reeling. And all of a sudden, we talk at halftime as a coaching staff, and we used to kiddingly call Matt Matheny, the associate head coach, the architect, because he would be a great architect of a game plan. Yep. So he suggested at halftime that we go into our full court pressure, and we we decided to push the ball and then go into full court pressure, which you just don't do against a team like Georgetown because they're overpowering athletically, but they're also methodical. Princeton on steroids. They're methodical with the Princeton offense. But all of a sudden, they started shooting early three-point jump shots in transition because we were pressing them. And you know what happens when you shoot an early three in transition and misses? Yeah. Well, it's a run out down the other end. And all of a sudden, that 17-point lead starts evaporating. And I'll never forget the one shot. Stephen comes off the screen, top of the key, buries the jumper from three, and gets fouled by Jeremiah Rivers and makes the foul shot. 4-point play, puts it in single digits. And once we got into single digits, we felt we had a chance. And then Stephen just went off. He just made shot after shot, sensational. Max Paulus-Goslin, Andrew Lovedale, Thomas Sander, outstanding defensively. Jason Richards putting the ball on the money, made a couple of great baseline drives. And boom, we win the game. And what was interesting about the game, the next game, that doubleheader was North Carolina played Arkansas. The North Carolina fans started filing into the Raleigh arena right about halftime. Guess who were they rooting for? They're rooting for Davidson because Georgetown had knocked North Carolina out the year before. So it was, again, you talk about these lucky happenings, playing Gonzaga coming across the country. Now in the same section with North Carolina, who had lost to Georgetown the year before, us playing Georgetown, North Carolina playing next. I mean, you can't make this up. This was stuff that just is happenstance, but very critical to our success.
So that weekend, you're pretty close to home, and now the venue changes, correct?
Correct.
And where are you off to? And I believe you face Wisconsin?
Correct, yeah. We
and loaded Wisconsin team. Another tough physical team, superb defensively, patient, well-coached.
Wins. I think 32-3, and Bo Ryan, just a Hall of Fame coach, just sensational. So in the 2 or 3 days leading up to the game, there was a press conference, and the player of the year, his name was Flowers in the Big Ten. The defensive player of the year is Flowers. Yeah. And we heard him make a comment in the press conference that he was going to leave Stephen Curry breathless.
Right.
And we use that. Believe me, we use that as motivation. Very easy.
What about Steph, though? How did Steph handle stuff like that?
He was sensational. He just no fingerprints. He showed nothing. Emotionless. It just registered. He wears a chip on his shoulder all the time, but you never see it. He's got it there. Believe me. He got it there from being passed over by the ACC programs when he was a high school player. He got it there when he first got into the league. Believe me, he's very good at masquerading it, but boy, it inspires him. So we're playing in Detroit in Ford Field, which is a football stadium for the Detroit Lions, 57,000 people. And in our section, it's I know Villanova, Kansas, us, Wisconsin, and I don't recall who else was in it. And I think it was Kansas against Villanova and us against Wisconsin. So we're going to the locker room at the 12-minute mark. You go to the locker room before the final tip, and walking towards the locker room in front of me, and we had a very long walk. It was about a half-mile walk to get to the locker room because it's a football field, was Flowers. And he's in front of me, and he's doing flips as he's going to the locker room. I mean flips. He looked like a rubber band going up and down. I was like blown away. The guy that was going to leave us breathless. Well, game starts, and it's tightly fought, and we go into the locker room tied. Great Wisconsin team. We are playing very well. We go in tied. First play of the second half, they miss a jump shot. Thomas Sander challenges the jump shot, and as soon as he challenges, he had tremendous IQ. He recognized that Steph had the rebound, so he immediately sprinted towards the front rim. So he had a two-step edge on the opponent. Stephen, sensational at seeing before he dribbles, his first pass more important than his first dribble. So he sees Thomas, takes one lead dribble, puts the ball right on the money. Thomas catches it in stride and gets fouled. 3-point play. So we go up 3 and never look back. we went up, I think we wound up winning the game by 16, 17, 18 points. And I mean, we played very, very well. And I think we caught the attention of the country at that point.
And I watched that game and I remember thinking, damn, Wisconsin looks really heavy-legged.
We ran pretty well.
Yeah, I was like, wow, they look really leaden foot, and the offense and your structure was just flowing, and aesthetically, I mean, that's why I love watching your teams play, because I just love the beauty of a good offensive system, and if you want to call it a system, but the ball movement, player movement, knowing when to penetrate, attacking at the right times, being aggressive. Like, that's the thing.
There was one point in that game, and the announcer was a very, very prominent announcer and a terrific guy named Gus Johnson.
Yeah.
Stephen catches the ball on the left wing in transition. Now, here comes the guy that's going to leave him breathless, Flowers. Okay? At full speed, he's running towards Steph in transition, maybe 4 or 5 seconds elapsed on the shot clock. Stephen, tremendous vision. That's probably his greatest physical ability, his vision. Right. He sees out of the corner of his eye that this guy's Flowers is coming, catches in stride in the wing, has an absolute sensational act with his fake. Flowers flies by. Stephen looks at him, pulls 3 in transition. Gus Johnson goes out of his seat screaming, this guy's sensational. I mean, it really got his attention, and he made one of those calls that you hear in a game, and it resonates for years upon years, and that was that call.
Wow, just tremendous. And you guys get that game going away, and we face Kansas.
Correct, yeah.
Kansas in the Elite Eight. Now, the Elite Eight is very, very difficult to reach. That's the final 8 out of 350 schools playing Division I college basketball in America, for those that don't know. And our school only has 2,000 kids.
Yep. Yeah. I think Kansas had more managers than we had students. But anyway, it was 57,000 people. It was national TV. It was a 5 p.m. game. It was the stage was set. You couldn't have been on a bigger stage. And we fought, and they were loaded. Mario Chalmers, they were just absolutely loaded. I don't know who they had, but boy, absolutely loaded. So we actually get a lead with 7.5 at the 7:54 mark. We're up by 7 points, and this is probably the biggest bonehead mistake I ever made. I decided to rest Jason Richards. I wanted to keep him for the home stretch. He was fatigued. He had played 35 minutes against Wisconsin, so I decided to give him a breather. I take him out, and Kansas goes on like a 9-2 run. And he was only out for a brief period of time, maybe 2 minutes. But in that 2 minutes that he was out, our team lost its rhythm. Yeah. We just didn't have that same rhythmic flow. And we went scoreless from like 7:54. We had 1 basket, I think, in a 5-minute period. So Kansas is up by 4 with 50 seconds to go. We got a baseline out of bounds play. Stephen reads the screen perfectly. Thomas Sanders sets a great screen. Jason delivers the ball to the pocket. Steph buries it. 1-point game. They bring the ball up with 40 seconds to go, and their point guard, I forgot his name, gets forced into taking a shot with 17 on the clock. Misses. We get the rebound, and we call timeout. Timeout. 3-quarter court.
Yep.
Now, they had been switching the entire second half. 4 guys, 5 guys. And their 5-man was as efficient as their 1-man guarding Stephen. So they really locked us up pretty well. So we initially thought we were going to have Jason bring it up, as we always do. They set a number of screens and get Stephen the shot. But that hadn't worked for the last 5, 6, 7 minutes. We hadn't gotten him a shot except on an out-of-bounds play. Okay. So we decided that let's put the ball in Stephen's hands, and at worst, he's going to have the ball in his hands to get a shot. Well, what did you know? He uses a ball screen, gets doubled, uses a second ball screen, gets doubled, tripled. One guy falls down, and Stephen, in a sensational way he can, delivers the ball right on the money to Jason, and Jason gets the shot, and I swear I thought it was going in, and it just hits the rim and bounces off to the left, and we go down as losers, but not losers at all, because we had such a tremendous season, and I'll live for the rest of my life saying that was a great shot by a great player that he had done. It was a great one.
And just to, capture the imagination of so many people around the world, Steph is now an international star, really. And at this point, and it's one of those strange things about success, your fame, your achievements will always be linked to Steph's, and part of Steph's fame and achievements will always be linked to you. What's that feel like? So few athletes have that type of relationship with another person. I mean, you've got at a very, very high level, you got Brady and Belichick.
Correct. Think about a lot of the guys in the NBA today. I can assure you that there aren't a lot of NBA fans that know where Westbrook went to school, maybe where Durant went to school, where a lot of NBA guys went to school. Is there any doubt where Stephen Curry went to college?
No.
Why? Stephen Curry. Stephen Curry has left Davidson, and he's made it a determination of his that I'm going to make sure people know about Davidson College. Thank you, Davidson. When he left after his third year, he sent a postcard to every fan with a thank you. Thank you for what you did for me and putting me on this stage and giving me this opportunity. Just a tremendous statement about the kind of grace that just oozes through his body. And he's never let people forget that he went to Davidson. And when you go out to the Oracle, and I haven't been to their new arena, but I was always just melted my heart when you'd see the introductions. Stephen Curry from Davidson College, and across the bunting in the Oracle, there'd be Davidson College. He made it a point of just continually accentuating the fact that Davidson is part of his being. And without doubt, his fingerprints are all over this program. His fingerprints are all over this college. What's your continuing influence on Steph? Not that he has many bad streaks, but does he call you up and be like, oh, I'm feeling this way? What's the interaction? What's the relationship like now? I know in the playoffs, you generally go out there almost every year and watch him play. My coaching of Steph ended long ago. Let me tell you that. He's got enough people telling him what to do, and he's smart enough to coach himself pretty darn well. In his first 2 or 3 years, I did speak with him rather consistently because, it was a different mindset in that first year or 2 or 3 with Golden State in terms of the respect he had to earn. And I share this. He was not welcomed with open arms by that roster when he came. He was looked at as somebody that could take away my playing time and take away my statistics. And by the end of that season, those guys on that roster embraced Stephen Curry as a brother because of what a good person he was, how welcoming he was, and what a great teammate he was. And it was during those times that he struggled a little bit, but that's the only time I ever spoke with him. And we used to always, and to this day, we still use the expression, Steph, you got to be willing to sleep in the streets. You know what that means? That means you got to be willing to get locked out of the house. And that's what great shooters do. And I learned that from Kevin Lockery, a great NBA coach and a great NBA player back in the 60s and 70s. And Kevin would always say to me, you got to be willing to sleep in the streets, which means, hey, you miss a shot, don't worry about it. You're going to make the next one. If you're that willing to shoot the ball, you got to be understanding. You might have to sleep in the streets tonight. That's okay. And Stephen took that to heart as a player here at Davidson and has carried that forward in the pros. And you've seen him the way he does it in the pros. I mean, he's sensational about the way he can miss, and all of a sudden, boom, you're not forced down, and all of a sudden, Warriors are on a 12-0 run.
Yep. What about you guys have a lot of different values, but talk to me about TCC, what it stands for and what it really means, and how it applies to the Davidson College program, because a lot of the 30 players have it tattooed on them. TCC.
Yeah, well, we're at Davidson, so the honor code is in existence, so there's no plagiarism here. Let me footnote where TCC came from. 1988, Lou Holtz, football coach at Notre Dame University, they win the national championship. The first meeting that they had in August of that year, Lou Holtz says to his team, there are 3 things that are going to guide us this year: trust, commitment, and care. Can you be trusted to do your best? Will you be committed to do your best? And will you care about each other and show it? And if you guys live that on the football field, we'll be champions. Well, they won it. I read that book, and we adopted that in 1993 here at Davidson. It became our foundation, our code of honor, and it has been with us ever since then. Trusted to do your best, committed to do your best, and then care about each other, and not just care, but show that you care. Those are 3 words to live your life as a dad, as a spouse, as a worker, as a coach, as a player, as a human being. And if you can live your life with those 3 words, I think you've got a foundation that is pretty darn strong and pretty darn good.
That's amazing. Another little point. Where do you reap the greatest reward? Now, this is purely selfish, Bob. You're allowed to be selfish here. When you see a player thrive for you, or when you see a player go on and thrive, what brings you the greatest pleasure?
You know what brings me the greatest pleasure?
What?
When I go to a wedding and I see 20 players there because they're brothers. When I go to a baptism and I see that the godfather is one of their teammates. You cannot put a value on how important that is to me, that this brotherhood of Davidson players extends far beyond the 4 years that they're here. And, I'm lucky because I've been here this long, and that continuity has obviously helped that tremendously. But the same things that I said in the locker room 20 years, 25 years ago, they'll joke about it. Players from 5 years ago will joke about it with the guys from 20, 25 years ago. And the special nature of Davidson College has allowed me an opportunity to walk into the great hallway of the glory years of the 1960s. Many of those guys from the 60s who played for Lefty, who put Davidson on the map, the Fred Hetzels, the Dick Snyders, the Jerry Crowells, the Michael Neals, the Dave Mosers, the Wayne Huckles, the Mike Malloys. Many of those guys are dear friends of mine and have become friends of mine just because of Davidson College and Davidson College basketball. So that's the greatest gratification I could receive as a coach at Davidson.
Wow. I mean, with what I do, you're familiar with Derek Rucker basketball, and that's probably the community that you bring. You know, kids come in and work with each other. These kids may have hated each other. Then all of a sudden, all those barriers are broken down. And, you know, you realize that I've built a community inadvertently. That was never the intent.
Correct. And you know what's interesting is when we recruited Jordan Barham, you became a big topic of conversation. And maybe in a subtle way, he came here because of you. It's that kind of connection. And we're talking a difference of almost 20 years. So that's how long that legacy lasts. And I just and what's really interesting also is now I'm starting to coach the sons of our former players. So I guess the age factor is something that's really kicking in now.
Wow, it's amazing. Well, I only have one favor to ask of you, because so Steph has never really had any address directly to the Australian public. We've never seen him here, and the number of messages I get beat down with, Derek, can you get Steph? Can you get Steph? I'm like, I'm not going to ask Steph. So, Bob, all I'm saying is if you happen to talk to Steph or Bryant or any of those guys, say, hey, during this lockout, if you want to go do a really cool podcast, get in touch with Derek. He'll hook you up. My God, that would alleviate. People think I have this direct line to Steph where I can be like, hey, Steph, come on in.
You know, the number of people that pull on Stephen is absolutely extraordinary and
unbelievable.
And if I could share this story, because I think it's a great story. There's a very prominent ESPN basketball commentator named Dan Dakich, played at Indiana, was a very good coach and a very good guy. And
Yep.
Dan called me up one day, and he does a radio show in Indianapolis, and he wanted to know if Stephen could call a kid who was in a cancer ward and not doing very well. And I said to Dan, Dan, Stephen gets these requests all the time, whether it's the ice bucket challenge or cancer or it's off the charts. Now, he's a global figure, so I know what happens just in the Davidson community. Can you imagine what happens in the world, the global community? And I said,
Coach,
no,
we got 14 seconds left.
I can't bring that to Steph. Well, lo and behold, the doctor happens to be a Davidson alum. The doctor calls me, and I tell Steph's agent. Little did I know that Stephen and Steve Kerr visited.
Sorry there, we got cut off with the 60-minute Instagram limit, but I'll bring Coach Bob McKillop back in here. Here we go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, that was a 60-minute cutoff. Okay, so go ahead. So
Stephen and Steve Kerr visited when they played the Pacers and brought him a box full of goodies. And the boy sadly died, but he died wrapped in a Golden State Warrior blanket and a Golden State Warrior hat. And, you know, those stories are never told. No one ever hears about that. And it's incredible what he does for humanity.
And someone said that someone was being a little bit critical of you, saying that you forgot to mention Bryant Barr's contribution over the years.
Bryant Barr made a decision to come to Davidson College, not because he was going to be Stephen Curry's roommate, but because Bryant Barr, when he came on his official visit, went to a church that he felt a very strong sense of comfort with. That was the deciding factor. And
really?
Brian has lived his life. He and his wife, Brittany, and their two boys have lived his life as if that decision was such a vital part of his experience at Davidson. And thankfully, maybe that decision led to him having the other opportunity to be Stephen's roommate. And those two guys are they're brothers. They're united at the hip. And Bryant, that one shot that was made in that 5-minute stretch when we couldn't score against Kansas, it was Bryant making a shot, driving across the paint off the backboard. He usually didn't shoot very much off the backboard, but he made that one off the backboard. And he was called the white. He was called the White Lobster because
White Lobster.
He's from Maine and he's very pale complexion. And to his credit, he is the one who was able to connect Dr. Fauci, who's become a prominent advocate for handling the pandemic here, with Stephen when they had that marvelous interview. So Bryant deserves kudos for that, as well as for all he's done for Steph Curry, the brand.
Since I got you back here, there were some really good things I wanted to ask you about. Your offensive principles. So we're back to X's and O's. Offensive principles. So there are 5: attack space, dribble with purpose, help someone get open, catch and see, crash the boards. Can you run me through each of those? I love attack space. I steal these, Bob. And you know, and for all the viewers out there, when I was team coaching and I would get confused or unsure about things, Bob is the person that I would go to. I would pick up the phone, call him. He always take my calls, and we have great chats. And I usually come out of it either feeling really dumb or feeling invigorated and energized and you know, stick to your guns and just be the best coach you can be. But let's talk about these principles. Attack space.
Well, the game is a war for space. If you have space, either offensively or defensively, you're going to have an opportunity to be successful. So you need space.
Yep.
How do you attack space? You can do it with and without the ball. A simple thing like when you set a screen, too many guys set Casper the Ghost screens. They come up to set the screen, all of a sudden they're looking for the ball so they don't take the space of the defender. You got to take the guy's space, attack his space. When you fake, do you attack space with your fake, or is it just a robotic movement? No, you got to attack space. You got to take space to get space. When you dribble, do you dribble right next to yourself, or do you attack space? When you run the court, Do you just jog down the court, or do you attack the space? When you cut, do you cut hard, or do you just move across the lane? When you post up, do you put your butt into some guy, or do you take his space with your body and then put your butt into him? So the game is all about space. That's the first concept. The second concept is dribble with a purpose. So don't just dribble, put the ball on the floor. You know, we'll go through film after film with our guys, and we'll count the dribbles that they take. And we believe the dribble is good if it has purpose. What's the purpose? To get a teammate open, attacking space, or to get to the rim, or to center the ball, to, like in hockey, to center the ball, center the puck.
Yep.
Okay. Catch and see. Third thing, don't catch and dribble. You look at kids today, the first thing they do when they catch the ball is they put it on the floor. NBA is the same way. So you got to catch and see. Why is that so important? Because we have guys cutting. We have guys screening. If you're catching and dribbling, you can't see the cutter. You can't see the guy using the screen. You can't see the guy after he sets the screen. The fourth thing is to finish your cut.
Yep.
You've got to be able to finish your cut. Why? Because you're creating space. You're absolutely creating space. Okay? And the last thing is probably the lost art of our game today, helping somebody. How do you help somebody? Screening, cutting, clearing space, running the court, posting up, faking. There are all ways to help your teammates. So those 5 things are interconnected and the basis for our offense.
And where did you develop this philosophy? Who influenced you with this basis?
Well, when you play at 108th Street in Rockaway, or you play at Jacob Reese Park in Far Rockaway, or you play at Lincoln Park in South Ozone Park, or Prospect Park in East Meadow, that's what it is. It's schoolyard basketball, but from a time in which there was wind. So when there's wind out there, guess what? You're not shooting jump shots. You're trying to get to the rim and get a layup. Also, backboards, the ball would like die on the backboard, meaning lead backboards. No nets, rims that were just incredibly hard to make a shot on. So you tried to get close to the rim. And how did you get close to the rim? By using these concepts. I didn't know this at the time, but I just reflected back upon playing days, and that's what everyone did. Now, I was fortunate to grow up in a time period when Red Auerbach was coaching the Celtics. Red Holzman was coaching the Knicks. Knight was at Indiana. Dean Smith was at Carolina. Lou Carnesecca was at St. John's. John Wooden was at UCLA. I grew up in a time period. Al McGuire was at Marquette. You lived in a time period when there were these legendary coaches.
What about some of the NBA structure offensively? How do you find that? Do you have a tough – I mean, you're playing at the same time, so your schedule is tight. But say the Houston Rockets, for example, and their analytics approach, which is heavy ISO with Harden, heavy PNR. Westbrook is the second option, but really Harden is driving that bus 75% of the time.
We counted the dribbles one year when Houston lost to Golden State. I think it was 2 years ago in the game. And I believe we counted the dribbles as a staff. And I think maybe I'm guessing numbers here, but I want to say there were 900 dribbles by Houston and maybe 200 dribbles by Golden State. I love the way that Golden State plays the game. I love the way San Antonio plays the game. I think there's tremendous movement. I think there's tremendous teamwork. I love the way those teams play. The analytics, that's such a big part of the NBA today. I stole a line from the baseball announcer for the New York Mets many years ago, Ralph Kiner. He would say statistics are like bikinis. They show a lot, but they don't show everything.
Yep. So in the Davidson program, who's your analytics guy?
All 4 or 5 of my assistants.
And are they heavy into it, or?
Oh, they're very good at it. Very good at it. And what's great about Davidson College, we have a math professor named Tim Chartier, and he's got a bunch of students, math majors. Now, this is a brilliant school. He's got a bunch of math majors serving as our analytic team. And several of them have gone on to NBA jobs. I mean, it's
really
absolutely extraordinary. Analytics play a big part in the way we present scouts and analyze opponents.
That's amazing.
When you're talking to me, it's amazing because it's Greek to me.
Well, wow. And so how's recruiting going right now during COVID?
One of the very satisfying aspects of Davidson College recruitment is that our assistant coaches make great decisions. Guys come here not because they receive a letter a day from our assistants, but because in their heart, they feel a great sense of comfort with the guys that are going to coach them, the players they're going to call teammates, and the system that they're going to use. There's no gray area about that. It's all black and white. They know. And if you look at recruiting trends in America today, you see transfer. I think there's 650, 700 kids transferring this year. We've been very fortunate that our guys don't transfer.
Wow. I think, I mean, look, the transfer portal system has made it so easy for players just to opt out. Like, I can't believe it.
Exactly. It goes back to TCC. Trust. You trusted a coach and you came to a school. Did the coach break the trust? Did you break the trust? Commitment. A coach committed to you. Did he break that commitment? You committed to the coach. Did you break the commitment? And care and show that you care. Well, I think that drives trust, and I think that drives commitment. If the coach shows care, the player shows care, somehow trust and commitment come into play in the right way.
Wow. So what is the next year's NCAA going to look like? Have there been many discussions about potential starting time? When are students going to be back on campus? I think, there's only one school in the country maybe operating right now?
Well, we might be still talking by the time that happens.
I hope so. I hope to have you back.
Hey, it's Friday night.
What do you have on Friday night? There's nothing to do.
My wife's waiting for me to go home and dance to the music from the 40s.
She's watching.
I'm ready to open up a bottle of red wine and put the fireplace on and have a nice dance with my wife. That's what I'm ready to do.
All right. I hear you. One final question.
Sure.
How many years you got left?
I take it day by day.
Yeah.
I don't look beyond, because if I look beyond, then I start thinking beyond. And if I start thinking beyond, I can't keep what's in front of me. I'm not that talented. I've got too little of a brain to think beyond what today presents. I tell you what, I am living in one of the greatest environments a coach could live in. I have an incredible staff, terrific players, a great secretary, athletic director, president, student body. This is Camelot for me.
Oh, man, that's great to hear. Well, 800 wins would be fantastic, Bob.
Yeah.
800, it's possible. And, man, I appreciate you taking your time. I will now let you go get Kathy. You got red already red at the house already?
Oh, yes. A great Pinot Noir.
All right. Well, enjoy it. And we'll talk again soon. Once again, thank you to your staff for making this happen. And I'm sure on behalf of all the viewers, man, much praise, and stay safe over there, Bob.
Great day to be a Wildcat, Derek, and thanks
for
those Wildcats.
It is a great day to be a Wildcat. Thank you, Coach Bob McKillop.